Hey everyone, I'm Rachel and I'm the Senior Product Manager at HubSpot. My team is responsible for properties, and I might have talked to a few of you about today's date and other properties related pieces of feedback. But today I'm going to talk about how to solve for today's date in HubSpot CRM. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to share with you some of the enhancements and features that we've released over the past couple years, even up to the past week, that will hopefully make it easier to solve for these use cases. So my plan today is to provide some brief context about what I mean by today's date. I'm going to talk about those recent releases, and then I'm going to spend the majority of my time here demoing how to accomplish those use cases in HubSpot. I'll leave time at the end for questions, but I'll also link out some key resources plus my email address for any follow-ups that we don't get to today. So some brief context. It's important to know how long since or how much time until something is going to happen in a business context. So for example, how old is this deal? Maybe I want to make a list of deals that have been open for too long so that I can follow up with the deal owners to understand what's going on. How long will it be until the deal renewal date? I might want to set up an automation that notifies users when deal renewal date is less than 30 days away so that there aren't any surprises as that date approaches. How long has a ticket been open? Let's say I want to track average time tickets are open across all my support reps so that I can use that as a metric for understanding whether I need to add headcount to my support organization. All of these questions really have baked into them a concept of a difference between today's date and some other date or date and time. And they all help you make kind of business decisions using data in the CRM. Some of you might be using workarounds to accomplish this right now, such as using a custom property populated by a workflow that runs every day. And the hope is that in this presentation, I'll show you some ways to accomplish these use cases natively with things that we've built over the past couple of years. I'm going to particularly highlight two recent releases to help solve for today's date use cases. So the first is being able to display property values with relative time from today. And the second is creating time since or time until calculation properties. So now I'll dive into each of those and show you how they work. All right. So you can now display dates and date time properties with relative time from today. So in the example on the slide, this is from the index page. This means that for a property like last contacted, you can start showing how many days it's been since this person was last contacted as part of the value displayed in the property. This doesn't change the value of the property, but it does help you avoid having to do that mental math when you're glancing at an index page or a record page and just want to know how much time has passed. But let me show you how these work. Go into my portal. All right, so I'm in object settings on properties. And let's say I want to take my last modified date property, which is a date and time property, and I want to start showing relative time. So I would go into this field type tab. You'll see that there are two radio options for the question, how should this date appear on records? And by default, it's showing date and time only. If I want to, I can configure it to show date, time, and relative time, and then you can see a little preview of how that will look. Let's say that I also want to do this for, let's actually do this for company. So I already set this up for company, actually, show date, time, and relative time. Let's say I also want to do create date for company. Again, this is a default property. I go into my field type and I start showing date, time, and relative time. I can also do this for my custom date and date time properties that I've created on this object. Okay, so I've set up those configurations. Now I'll go into the index page to show you how those get displayed. So I'm on my company's page. I've added both last modified date and create date as properties in my index page columns. And you can see that they've all started to display that 4 days ago, 41 days ago, 937 days ago. I definitely have some older company records in here. And that same display is available on the record page. So I've added those properties in my About section, and you can see that display on the record pages as well. All right. Okay, so going back to the presentation, So just to summarize, this feature is available for all hubs, all tiers. You can apply it to any custom or default date or date time property, and it's a simple kind of display of relative time. The actual value of the property doesn't change. So if you filter or if you make a list, the value will still be filtered as October 15th in this example and as the date stored in that property. All right, so now let's move on to time since and time until calculated properties. All right, these are calculation, excuse me. And these are calculation properties that help you capture the time between today and some other date. These calculations can be used in tools across the platform like lists, workflows, and reports. So let's dive back into the demo. So I'll go back into property settings. I'm going to walk you through 2 use cases. So we're going to go through deals as a use case and then contacts as a use cases. For deals, let's say I want to accomplish 2 things. I want to get a better picture of how old my deals are and how long until renewal for my deals. Specifically, I want to set up an excuse me, an in-app notification to send to teams at my company when a deal renewal is coming up, and I want to assign a task when that date is approaching. I also want to maintain a list of stale deals. Oh, excuse me. And I also want to maintain a list of stale deals. Okay, so to do that, let's create a test property. So time since create date. And in my field type, I'll choose calculation. So you'll see the typical options, custom equation and time between. And now you'll also see 2 additional options, time since and time until. So for time since, that'll give me the time between a start date. So I select a date or date time property. You can see that I can also select some of my date entered or date exited stage properties, which would help me calculate the time since a deal entered a particular stage. And then the end date is locked as today, and this is updated automatically by HubSpot. So I've actually created a deal age property already. I'll show you how I set this up. It's a calculation property with start date as the create date and the end date as today's date. So this is going to tell me how old my deal is. Separately, I've set up a time until renewal property. And this will calculate the time between start date as today and then renewal date sometime in the future. And just like the time since properties, I can select any date or date time property for the end date. All right. So those are my 2 deal properties. Now let's go on the index page and check them out, see if I can create some views. Okay, so you can see that for deal age and time until renewal date, I've started to display the days. I have some old deals here. I have some deals that are 939 days old, and I have some deals which are approaching renewal date in also kind of a long time as well. I want to point out that for filters, even outside of the time since and time until properties, we have added some filtering capabilities here that should help you action on today. So if I just take create date, not the time until create date property, I can filter based on create date being equal to today. I can also filter based on a specific date. And then I can also filter based on is less than or is more than a day ago or a day from now. So all of these filters are taking into account today. And that's one way to approach this if you just want to action based on the original property. Okay, but going back to our kind of time since and time until properties, if I wanted to create filters for deal age, for example, I would be able to filter on is less than, is greater than, is known, and is unknown. And then I could use days, hours, minutes, and even seconds. So for example, I've created a quick view here of deals older than 90 days. So my filter is deal age is greater than 90 days. And I've also created a view of deals with an upcoming renewal in the next year. So this is time until renewal date is less than or equal to 365 days. All right. One other thing that I want to point out while we're here is that it's also possible to possible to add object tags based on relative time properties. So just taking a quick detour into my deal settings, there's a feature here that allows you to add board view, kind of like visual tags based on a filter on a property. And so I'm filtering to show a green tag for deals which were created less than 30 days ago. And you can see that showing up in my board view here. So that's just a quick aside. All right, okay, so I covered views, board view, object tag filters, like filtering on the index page. So now let's move on to lists and reports. Okay, so I originally wanted to create that list of stale deals. I'm able to do that now. I have actually the opposite, deals less than a year old, but if I wanted to create a list of stale deals, I would create my deal-based list, and then I would have my filter as age is greater than, let's say, 180 days. And then I would be able to create that list. Similarly, could do that for deals up for renewal in the next year. So I filtered by time until renewal date is less than or equal to 365 days, and I'm able to keep that active list updated. All right, so that's our lists use case. Now let's dive into reports. All right, so one of the things I wanted was a very simple kind of view of deal age. And so in this single object report, I've brought in my deal age property, measured it as an average, and I'm displaying it by a deal owner. You can see I don't have a ton of owners in my portal right now, but this is kind of a simple example of using time since properties in the report builder. And lastly, I'll hop over to the workflows tool to show you that automation that I was talking about, where I wanted to send an in-app notification when a deal renewal was coming up. So here I built that workflow. I have my enrollment triggers set as time until renewal date is less than 30 days. And when that condition is met, I'm going to send an in-app notification to the users and deal owners, telling them that the deal is up for renewal soon. So very simple example of that. And then similarly, I've set up a task notification when deal renewal date is less than 90 days away. So just two examples of kind of automating based on today using deal age. Okay, I'll pause there in case there are any big questions on those two use cases. If not, I will continue with a contacts use case. I haven't been monitoring the chat. Anything come up, Kyle?
The chat is mostly side banter, but a lot of love. No questions that I've seen. Pipe up if I'm missing a question. One piece of feedback is people would appreciate sometimes when it says like 983 days or whatever, if we could have like number of years instead, just so they don't have to math it out. But overall, people are really liking it.
Cool. Yeah, I can talk a little bit about how the duration conversions work on the index page. So this is really kind of a kind of platform display decision that we made to keep it consistent between tools. But the conversion is if it's larger, basically it's 2.5 minutes, 2.5 hours, 2.5 days to get to the next threshold of display. And then if it's larger, once we hit 12 years in days, then we start converting it to show in years. So to get back to that question, there will be a years displayed here once it gets to 12 years. And this is meant to be consistent with other parts of the tool. But definitely would love to hear more feedback if folks would like that to be a different type of duration threshold, or if that's something that they would want to be configurable for ease of use.
Got it. And then Josh made a very good call out. There are actually quite a few questions in the Q&A, but I think we'll come back to those at the end, unless you want to take a Q&A break now. I think we can just tackle them all later.
Yep, sounds good. Okay, cool. Let's do a contacts use case to kind of continue to illustrate more ways to use these. So This time I want to know about time since a contact entered a particular life cycle stage. Specifically, I'm interested in knowing how long it's been since a contact in my CRM became a sales qualified lead, so I can like target and better understand how those contacts are doing. I also want to know contact age so that I can fire off automations when contacts are new and fresh in the CRM. So the contact age will be a simple time since create date calculated property, exactly the same as my deal age property. And then time since contact became a sales qualified lead, we'll be using one of these stage calculated properties and then ending on today's date. You can see that I can do this for any of my pipeline stages. All right, so again, going back on the index page, I won't go through this too much in detail, but I have my time since create date, which is sortable and filterable. Time since contact became a sales qualified lead, which you'll notice is pretty short for a few of these. And then I created my quick views. So I wanted to create a view of contacts who recently became a sales qualified lead. And then I also wanted to create a view of contacts who haven't been reached out to in over a year to just get an idea of, I guess what you would call stale contacts or contacts who might need to be updated in the CRM. Okay, moving to lists. Similarly, I'm gonna want that list of contacts that have been created, the contacts that became a sales qualified lead less than 30 days ago. So just to show a little bit more about the filters here, is less than, is greater than, is known, is unknown. These are the same filters that are available on the index page. And then I can action this by days, hours, minutes, and seconds. So here I just wanted that view of contacts that entered that stage within a certain time. And then I also have a list of my new contacts. So time since create date is less than 10 days old. I don't really have a ton of contacts that I've created in the past 10 days in this portal. All right. And then going back to my reporting dashboard, again, a very simple report showing time since contact became a sales qualified lead by owner. I also wanted to show how these properties work with another kind of feature that was recently released in reporting. So there's a feature called conditional formatting, where you can basically take a table chart. In this case, I have my time since last contacted, and then I pull in the first and last name. If you go into chart settings and then you use the conditional formatting feature, you can apply formatting like colors to one of these properties. So in this case, I'm able to see kind of like a highlighted view of contacts who were recently reached out to, and then red for ones who are not recently reached out to. So just wanted to highlight that as a nice way to create kind of more visual reports. Okay, and then going back into my workflows tool, so I wanted to fire off an automation when a contact is hitting a certain age. So in this case, time since create date is greater than 10 days and the contact has filled out a form or had at least one page view is the enrollment trigger. And then I'm delaying it and then I'm sending an email, which has not been written. So that's just an example of a use case with a contact record and a time since property. All right, I will pause here because I'm sure there are a lot of questions. I can talk, I have a bunch of other automations and reports and views set up to continue talking through use cases. I tried to pull as heavily as I could from real customer use cases, but I'm sure there's more.
I love it. You're getting job offers in the chat now, Rachel. So if you're looking for gig work on the side, there's some folks who would love for you to rebuild some of this stuff.
Okay, noted. Before we hop into questions though, I did want to, I know kind of like blew through a bunch of use cases. I did want to make sure we kind of like clearly outline the support that's available and the limitations for these properties, and then we can get to questions if you don't mind. So just to cover the use cases that I went through: deal age, time until deal renewal, time since contacts became a sales qualified lead. Before we go into questions, I want to quickly summarize where time since and time until properties are and aren't supported. So as I just showed you, they're supported in the index page, including in object tag filters on the board view, in the record page. They are available in lists, workflows, and reports. In reports, they can be used in the new conditional formatting feature. And lastly, they are also newly supported in the mobile app. Very exciting. I also want to call out some limitations. Time since and time until properties aren't supported in the datasets tool or as filters in the custom report builder. They're not supported as inputs and calculation and rollup properties, although you can bring them into sync properties. And they're also not supported in custom data sync field mappings. All right, that was my disclaimer. I want to make sure I link out these resources because they capture all of the limitations and areas of support that I just mentioned. Let me just pull these links into the chat. So the first article I'm going to link is an overall today's date article that goes through both of the features I talked to you about today. And then the second one, the link is actually super long, so sorry about that, is about time since and time until properties specifically. And I want to thank everyone for their kind of engagement with the product team on this topic. Like, we really do listen to and read all the feedback that you provide, and that's what's helped us build the solutions that I shared today. All right, let's tackle questions. I see a lot in the chat. Anything that we should start with?
No, I think it's fine. If everyone wants to go over to the Q&A tab and upvote your favorite questions, looks like there's currently 28 in there. If there are any haven't been answered, feel free to add them. We've got lots of time here. I will give you all 10 or 15 seconds to upvote your favorites, and then we'll work most popular to least popular. And 10. I don't know. I don't. There are votes in here. There's a clear winner with 11 votes. Can this relative time be used in filters and reports? For example, show me all the contacts created 10 days ago.
Yes. I can bring up, so I think one of these views, let's actually do it. Let's do it live. Okay, so I have a time since create date property for my contacts. So let's create a quick view. And then filter, and I'm showing this in index page because this is also available everywhere there are filters. So there's my view of contacts who were created recently. I think I also showed a version of this in workflows, maybe, but the answer is yes.
Yeah, and then if I'm building like a report and I filter my data to use one of these, then that'll give me a report for basically a rolling time range, right? Like contacts created in the last 10 days. Every day I look at it. If I look at it 10 days from now, I'll see a report about a completely different set of records.
Yes, so you can use these as inputs to reports. You're not able to use the properties as filters in reports.
Okay.
So you can build your report with time, relative time as the X and Y axis as part of your table, but they're not available in filters in reports.
Got it. Okay. I will resort these because more votes have come in. Would it be possible to have only a single property with today's date?
So the two solutions, or in particular time since and time until properties, are meant to solve for that. We don't plan to release a single property representing today's date, but both of those calculation properties have today's date built into them. So the intention is to solve for that.
Great. And Michelangelo and the 16 people who upvoted that, I would love to see just in the chat use cases that were not covered by the things Rachel's team has created. If there are any gaps, I have personal curiosity around that. Would it be possible to display the relative time in units like days, months, quarters, or years? Having this feature would be valuable as business requirements can vary for different companies. A little additional context on this, Rachel. You explained that the threshold for seconds to minutes and minutes to hours and stuff is 2.5, but for days to years is 12.
Yes.
And there's general rumbling that 12 years is a really long time for CRM data. I think most of the people here do not have data going that far back. So having a lower threshold or a configurable one, I think would be valuable for a lot of these people.
Noted. Yeah, I think as much as we can kind of understand more about the feedback of whether you would just expect the thresholds to be lower or if it's really important to have it be configurable, perhaps on like a per property basis, that would all be super helpful. But at the moment, it's standardized with the thresholds that I described.
Yeah. It makes me curious. This is basically off topic, but I wonder, like, if I was shown a random large number and asked to estimate how many years that number of days represents, I mean, if it starts with a 3, a 6, or a 9, I would probably be pretty good. But if it's like 15,000, I don't know. Like, is that still 5 years? Is it because of that 65? Anyway, I don't know.
We're weighing between kind of like the need for precision versus the need for kind of simplicity. So we hear a lot like, oh, I want more, like I want the exact number of days to be visible. So there's a balance. I think
a lot of people were saying they would like it to say like 5 years, 3 days or whatever. And that's different from what we're just like, we don't have anywhere, I don't think, where multiple units are used. And so I see how that gets tricky. You lose quite a bit of precision when you round to the nearest 365 and a quarter. So, yes. All right. Could this be created for the marketing event object? So an event is less than a day away, trigger a reminder.
For the marketing event object, I'm going to have to brush up if you can create custom properties for marketing events, but this feature should be available for any object where you can create a property. Okay, so let's do it. Marketing event. Let's see. Yep. I don't remember what the exact example was in the question, but it's available for all objects.
Yeah, so I think reminder. So I think it would actually be a time until, like, event is 5 days away or whatever. Like, don't forget to come to this event. But it looks like, assuming a start date property exists, which you could create a custom property for. If it doesn't exist, you can do that thing. So I think that's good. I have not looked yet. Can you do this on custom objects? So yes. You basically just answered that. Yeah. Anywhere you can create custom properties, you can create these. Or I guess anywhere you can create calculated properties, we should say.
Yes.
Is there any plan to be able to change all property fields to add relative time for all date fields at once, as opposed to having to go into all properties and updating them manually?
That's really interesting. I guess my question would be if it's for this person or for other people, do you want, like, are you expecting that you would want all of your date and date time properties to display relative time? I think that's something that we weren't necessarily anticipating, but I could see that as a potential kind of like bulk edit feature in the future. Right now, it's not possible. You would need to kind of do a per property edit to start showing relative time, but curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, that's another one. Friends, drop some thoughts in the chat there. If you would want to see this as like just the default for all these properties, or bulk edit certain properties, or what you're imagining. Robin suggested this and 8 people upvoted it. So that's pretty significant. I will be exporting the chat afterward and sharing it with Rachel. So share all your use cases and thoughts, and it'll make its way to her and her team. Here's another. Can we reduce the 12 years to 1? So it's another one. People, that 12-year threshold to this group feels very high. Makes sense to me. Can the field type be changed for existing properties, or is it only available when creating new properties?
So you wouldn't be able to take an existing calculation property and change it into a time since or time until property. Once you create the time or since or time until property, you can swap out the date or date time property that you're using as an input for it, but you're not able to convert other properties to time since or time until. For the other solution, to just display relative time, you can take any existing date or date time property and start applying that setting. It doesn't have to happen at the point of property creation.
I think it's really cool that it works both for HubSpot standard properties and custom properties, because sometimes new features roll out. Like property validation was one, right? You couldn't apply it to some of the standard properties for a while there. And it's great that just out of the gate, it works everywhere. Gina asks, how can we do is in between?
So that would be, maybe I'll ask for more elaboration on that, but you are able to filter on date and date times between two dates today with some of the filters enhancements that were made over the past couple of years. So for example, on the index page, I could take it like a date or date time property and then set like is between two dates. I'm curious what that would be for the time since and time until properties. Maybe I'm missing.
Yeah, I wonder if this is, I was reading this as is in between 2 days. Do you want to show those filters? Because I think they are pretty recent. I made a video about them just like a month or so ago, and people were really excited.
So let's do create date is between, and then like, let's say yesterday and tomorrow.
So yeah, so that filter I think is fairly new. And then in calculate properties, you can do time between and just choose 2 date properties. That's been around for a while.
Yes, I will show that as well. So time between, and then I have my start date and my end date. So the idea is that like the time since and time until properties are essentially an iteration of time between with one of these as today, if that makes sense. So if you have 2 kind of distinct dates, then you would use a time between property.
Great. Janelle asks, how are you applying this for time spent in deal stages? You skipped over that really quickly, like a stone across the water. Do you want to show the deal stage properties and how you're using them?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the demo got me a little breathless. Okay, so you were mentioning deal stage. So time since entered, I'll pick a random stage. I'll do my calculation. Let's choose a time since property. And so I have a bunch of these HubSpot generated properties like date entered, appointment scheduled, presentation scheduled. And so I would pick one of these, and then this tells me how long it's been since the deal entered that stage. So if I go ahead and create it, then go on my index page. Oh, actually, I have one that I already created here. Time since appointment scheduled, sales pipeline. I think the one I created was for a different pipeline. But that's an example of using deal stage.
And one call out here, when we added the time entered, time exited properties, we also have time in properties for individual stages. So some of this exists by default, but yeah, you can choose if you want to know when it just count from the time it became entered a certain deal stage. You can do that.
Yep.
Ooh, how about this use case? Time since form submission.
Oh, interesting. This is where I might need to do some additional research investigation. Essentially, if the form submission is captured as like a value in a property, you would be able to accomplish this in a time since property. So if there's some property which updates as its value, like recent form submission, perhaps via a workflow, you would be able to accomplish that use case. But I don't have anything in my portal to demo that at the moment.
And if I could just spitball here for a minute, I think there are a lot of things with these time since properties that the first part of the equation, you can create a workflow to create a timestamp in a date property when pretty much anything happens, right? So if you care about any form submission, you could do that. Or if there's a specific form you care about, you do that. Or if you just want to, going back to the deal stage, you just want to know when it last changed from one deal stage to another, and you don't care which stages were involved. You could create workflows that stamp all these things and then pull them into the time since calculation, I think.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So for example, this was this isn't related to form submission, but this was a workflow that I built to stamp a status property when an end date has passed, so that I could use that property in a time since, time until.
That's great.
So I could imagine you doing something similar for form submissions.
Yeah, do it in both directions. How can this be used when the initial date is annually recurring, birthday or renewal date?
I think my question there would be how the annually renewing date is calculated. So you wouldn't be able to use another calculated property as an input for these properties, but if date of birth is like updated by some other source, like let's say a workflow, that would be perfectly usable and actually like a use case I would expect to work pretty well with time since and time until properties. So I guess I'm wondering if there's like any particular concern with the recurringness of those dates.
Yeah, and depending on what you're trying to do, workflows can just recur. You can have them happen annually on a particular date, for example, and that can make a lot of the things happen automatically.
Yeah.
What about integrations? If we are mapping create date of a deal in NetSuite to a create date field in HubSpot, will it affect the integration?
I don't know that I have a particular answer for that. I do want to point out that one of the limitations is like data sync field mappings. But I don't know if I have an answer for the NetSuite integration specifically.
If you have a date property, like a create date or some other date, that is pulling from an integration and populating into HubSpot, HubSpot doesn't care about the source of the data, right? If you have that date property, you can still create the calculated property based on that.
That's true.
Okay. So yeah, that's a big fat, it depends. But I'm optimistic you can accomplish what you're trying to, Janelle, and your 9 friends. Are the additional conditions functionalities also planned for the calculated time since and time until today options, same as available for all other time-based calculations?
Not at the moment. Would love to hear more of those use cases around what conditions would be helpful, but not planned yet.
For the folks like me that don't exactly know what that means, can you give a little color around what that is?
So let's go into my 15 tabs. Let's go into property settings. So for calculated properties, oops, okay. You can set additional conditions for time between. So you could create a condition to say like, if annual revenue, I don't have great values here, but if company role is equal to like some option, then calculate this property.
Got it.
And so you can see those aren't available for time since and time until properties, but curious to hear more about the conditions people would add here.
Got it. And if those conditions aren't met, then the calculated property is just null, it's just empty?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
The calculation doesn't update.
Got it. I didn't know that. Thank you. Can this be used to display the number of days a deal is in a deal stage? I think we covered that. Colin, if we didn't cover it, let us know in the chat, but we've talked about that a little bit. I think we just hadn't gotten to your question yet. We want to create a stoplight report for tickets that have important milestones. Is that possible?
Can I ask more about what a stoplight report is?
So with the conditional formatting Rachel showed earlier, if you have a table, you can have different colors for different values and different thresholds. And I think you can do red, yellow, green. I think that is just a default template option for the color coding of that report. I do not know if that's what you're trying to get to with tickets and milestones. But that is a thing that exists. Hi. This is Grace. She has some questions too. She just came back from a play group. She's taking her coat off. Zipper's stuck. Can we calculate amount of days on current stage for deals? Okay, this is a very popular use case. I really think we answered this question. And it's just been asked multiple times in multiple ways. So I'm going to keep going, but call me out in the chat if I'm skipping your questions unjustly. Is the time since and time until ever going to be allowed in other calculated properties? I use today's date in several calculated properties, for example, days until expiration, that I heavily use and can't get rid of today's date unless the time since and time until can be used in calculated properties.
So they're not able to be used in calculated properties right now, and I don't anticipate that changing. I would say for the example that you mentioned, time until, I'm forgetting the rest of it, but I think that could be, yeah, time until expiration. That could be a time until property, right? You could set today as the start date and then expiration date as the end date. So I'm wondering if that could be like wholesale replaced with a time until property.
Yeah, I don't know. Just brainstorming on Josh's behalf here. If your expiration is somehow calculated, like that expiration date depends on what package you bought or what tier you're on or something, but still, I feel like all that calculation. Well, I see. If all that fed into a date property somewhere else, you cannot then use that as an input until in a days until property. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, okay. You wouldn't be able to use it as part of the time until property. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyway, Josh, let us know if we misunderstood your question. I think we got there. Does the time since last contacted property count marketing, email, and SMS, or is it just one-to-one communication that is counted? So hold on. I think you're conflating two things, Abria. There's a last contacted property, which I think includes all forms of communication, marketing and sales, one-to-one. But there are a lot of different last properties. There's last contacted, last modified, last, I don't remember what else. There's like 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
Last engagement date, last marketing email click. So if you just search for last, like Rachel is doing here, I think you can find the one you're looking for. None of these though are time since properties. These are just date properties. But then Rachel demonstrated how you can change the display so that it includes in parentheses how many days it's been.
Yes. So I can take one of these. Oh, some of these are text. So let's choose one that isn't text. So I took I think my last contacted property, and this is the radio button where I start showing relative time on it.
Yep. Great. Let's see. Some of these questions have been answered. Can these properties be used in workflows? Yes. Can they be used in other calculated properties? No. Is this for days away only, or could we get more granular for hour? Event time start is 1 hour from now. So that I think that is a good point of clarification. If we have days until or time until a particular thing, once we get under, is it under 2.5 days, we start seeing hours. And then once we get under 2.5 hours, we see minutes. And then a couple of times we even saw seconds, right? So the final countdown, you're going to see a few seconds there. And you can filter for those things.
I think on the index page, it will say like a few seconds ago until 45 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it probably doesn't update on a second-by-second basis, at least in the UI. So that makes sense to me. Okay, Charlene, I hope that answered your question. John asks, my today workaround was specifically for a deal tag based around expected ship date. We have a view that basically shows everything that is supposed to ship this week. I ran into an issue where when things were supposed to ship today, they drop out of the view. Any solves for date is less than 7 days from now, today, or in the past?
So it sounds like the issue was with, I guess I'm not.
I think, John, let me know if I'm misunderstanding or misrepresenting this, but I think what he was looking for is he has a ship date property, and he wants to have is less than 7 days from now, including today and in the past. But if you have a time until, that'll drop into negatives once you pass the date, right?
Yes.
And so a filter for is less than 7 would include 0 and negative numbers, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, if your time until isn't in the past, the value of that property will be negative and will be included in the less than filter.
Okay. So John, let us know if that gets you where you want to go. I think that's actually really exciting to think about negative values and what that opens up. That's not a thing we've touched on, but I can definitely see the value of it here.
Johnson, sweet. All good.
Hooray. Can you count the deal cycle age from open/first interaction to close? So we have talked about deal stages and we've talked about create date. First interaction is interesting. I know some of our, I think like contacts and things have first properties. I don't know if deals have like first interaction properties. But if you have that date stored somewhere, Amelia, then yes.
I'm not seeing it as a default property, but yeah, exactly what you're saying. That sounds like a time between property to me.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, is the property saved as date and hour or day only? So there are date and date time properties in HubSpot, Veronica. Are all of our standard date properties date time, Rachel?
I would say like 90% are date time under the hood. Yeah.
Most of them are. So the time is in there. Even if it's not, even if your UI isn't set up in such a way to display it, the data usually is there hiding underneath somewhere. And then if you do a time since or time until, you'll get that level of granularity, especially if you're within less than, say, 2.5 hours of it. Talked about that. Anton wants you to come visit him in Montreal. Calculate properties. Time since create date is not a standard property. It's one Rachel created as an example, and you can create it also. That's probably a great place to start with experimenting with time since properties, because every object has a create date property by default. So that's always going to be available for you to play around with. Amelia wants to know if changing the display so it shows the relative time, it will slow down the system. Does that have any sort of drag on performance?
Not that I'm aware of. Shouldn't impact performance in your portal or in anyone else's. If you do notice issues, definitely let us know, but should work exactly the same as it did before.
Got it. Can we have a today's date filter in lists too, please? So this is interesting. In parts of HubSpot, we do have relative filters where you can say like, create date is today or is yesterday or due date is tomorrow. I don't know exactly where all those exist and where they don't exist. But
yeah,
I guess
so
they're in lists.
yeah, let's check out this together because there is like one set of kind of like consistent filters throughout the entire system. Let's go here. But there are some places that have, let's pick a date. So last activity to date. So we do have a decent amount of filters here. So I could put in today and kind of approximate that. I could also put is equal to today. And that would essentially be the same as what we saw on the index page. So there is decent support here, even outside of the time since and time until properties.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. I hope that answered your question, Lavanya. Let us know if it didn't. We are now down to the part of the list of Q&A where there's a long tail of questions that have gotten 1 or 0 upvotes, I think. And we're coming up on time. So I'm going to transition back over to chat. I'm just 167 messages behind over there. So hopefully everything is going well. Rachel, if people have additional questions, thoughts, feedback, I see your email address is here on the screen. Is that the best way to reach out to you? Is there anything else you'd recommend?
That is the best way to reach out to me. I'm very aware of the kind of myriad use cases and questions folks might have, and really welcome all of them. Hopefully this gets us, part of the way there, and we can continue kind of iterating based on feedback. But yeah, that's my best way to reach me.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for being here. Thanks everyone for joining us. Yeah, that's our show for today. I'm gonna shut us down, I guess, about 5 minutes early, and I hope to see you all back next week.